The apartment door closed with a dull click that echoed longer than it should have. Lena stood in the narrow hallway, holding a folded napkin she had meant to tuck into her husband's jacket pocket. It stayed in her hand, forgotten. The mirror by the door reflected a woman in a simple dress, clean, ironed, modest. Her hair was neatly pinned back. No glitter, no bold lipstick. Just her. Everyone else has wives who are bright, well-dressed, and wearing makeup, Pavel had said, not looking at her as he tightened his tie. I'm not taking you to the corporate party like this. He left alone. Now the silence pressed in. The clock ticked. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop and pulled away. Lena unfolded the napkin, smoothed it flat on the small console table, and breathed out slowly. She wasn't angry. Anger took energy she didn't have. What she felt was a familiar weight, the quiet knowledge that her efforts often went unseen. Across town, the hotel ballroom glowed with warm lights and polished glass. Pavel walked in, shoulders squared, rehearsing smiles. He nodded at colleagues and accepted a drink he didn't really want. Around him, laughter chimed like glassware. Dresses shimmered. Someone's perfume cut through the air, sweet and sharp. So, Pavel, a coworker said, clapping him on the back, where's your better half tonight? Pavel shrugged, forcing a grin. She's busy. The truth felt small in his mouth. He drifted toward a cluster of managers, aware of how alone he looked. Every few minutes, someone else arrived arm in arm, a picture of confidence. Pavel straightened his jacket again and scanned the room, hoping the night would pass quickly. Then the doors at the far end opened. A hush rippled outward, subtle but unmistakable, as the boss entered. Viktor Andreev was not loud, not flashy. He commanded attention by the way he walked, unhurried, assured, as if the room had been waiting for him. Conversation softened. Glasses paused mid-air. At his side was a woman. She wore a midnight blue dress, elegant without trying to impress. No sequins, no dramatic cuts. Her hair fell in soft waves, and her makeup was minimal, enough to brighten her eyes, nothing more. She smiled at people as they passed, a calm, open smile that didn't seek approval. Who's that? Someone whispered. That's his wife, another replied. Lena. Pavel felt something twist. Lena. The name landed heavier than expected. Viktor greeted a few executives, introduced his wife with a gentle hand at her back. This is Lena, he said simply, pride warm but unspoken. She nodded, listened more than she spoke, asked thoughtful questions. When someone complimented her dress, she thanked them and moved the attention away with ease. Pavel watched from a distance, his drink forgotten. This Lena didn't dominate the room, but the room leaned toward her anyway. She laughed at the right moments. She noticed when a server struggled with a tray and quietly shifted to make space. She spoke to a junior assistant as attentively as she did to a director. She's different, a manager near Pavel murmured. Yes, another agreed. She makes you feel seen. The word stung, though Pavel didn't know why. He remembered his own hallway mirror, the simple dress, the pinned hair. He remembered saying, like this, with a careless flick of his hand. The boss raised his glass for a brief toast. Viktor's voice was steady. He thanked the team, acknowledged the long hours, and ended with a nod toward his wife. And to the people who stand behind us, quietly making everything possible. Applause filled the room. Pavel clapped too, slower than the rest. A realization crept in, unwelcome and sharp. Brightness wasn't about color or shine. It was presence. It was kindness carried with confidence. It was choosing simplicity and meaning over noise. As the evening continued, Pavel found himself watching Lena, Viktor's Lena, more than the glittering dresses. He noticed how she leaned in to hear, how she never interrupted, how her smile didn't fade when the attention moved elsewhere. The more he watched, the more his chest tightened. His phone vibrated. A message from his wife. I hope the party is going well. Don't forget to eat something. I left soup in the fridge for when you're back. Pavel stared at the screen. Around him, laughter swelled again, glasses clinked. He typed, erased, typed again. It's nice here, he finally sent. Across town, Lena, his Lena, was likely folding laundry, the radio low, the evening passing quietly. The thought settled in him with a strange mix of regret and resolve. The night had shown him something he hadn't expected. And as the boss and his wife moved through the crowd, calm, united, Pavel understood that he had walked into the ballroom alone long before he ever closed the apartment door. Pavel returned home long after the party ended, the city streets dim and quiet. Streetlights cast long, golden rectangles across the pavement, and the occasional car passed with a low hum, breaking the calm. He paused at the doorstep, hesitating. The apartment smelled faintly of basil and warm bread, home, yet different from the glittering images of the ballroom. He opened the door. Lena was at the kitchen table, a single lamp illuminating her profile. She wore her usual simple dress, sleeves rolled up as if she had been sorting through bills or notes. A mug of tea steamed in front of her, untouched. Her hair was loosely pinned now, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She looked up, smiling softly. Not flashy, not demanding attention, but enough to stop him mid-step. "Back late," she said gently. "Yes," Pavel muttered, shrugging off his jacket. He noticed her eyes first, calm and steady, then the way her hands were folded around the mug, quiet but certain. "The party was fine." He hesitated. Words tangled. How could he explain the strange mixture of admiration and shame twisting inside him? Lena tilted her head, waiting. She didn't press, didn't demand. She simply offered him space, which somehow felt heavier than any question he might have asked. "I saw Victor's wife," Pavel said finally, his voice low. "She's remarkable." Lena raised an eyebrow. "I know." Pavel blinked, unsure whether she meant she knew who she was or she knew the feeling he was trying to express. He shuffled to the table, sitting across from her, feeling smaller than he had at the party yet somehow more exposed. He began again, then stopped. It was hard to admit that he had judged her, her simplicity, her quietness, without seeing the full picture. He had thought brightness was color, glitter, bold makeup. He had been wrong. Lena stirred her tea. "Brightness isn't something you wear, Pavel," she said finally, her voice soft but steady. "It's how you move in the world, how you treat people. It's not about being seen, it's about seeing others." He looked at her, realizing the words weren't just advice, they were a mirror. A reflection of everything he had missed. And in that moment, the weight of his earlier arrogance pressed down on him. I didn't appreciate," he began, struggling to form the sentence. I thought being noticeable was the same as being good. I see now, I was wrong." Lena smiled faintly, but not indulgently. It was calm, patient, unlike the flashes of condescending pride he had sometimes imagined from others. "It's okay," she said. "Everyone learns at their own pace. Even if it's late." He swallowed hard, feeling an unfamiliar mix of shame and gratitude. She wasn't shouting, wasn't punishing him. She was showing him a quiet, unshakable truth he had ignored. That love, respect, and attention weren't about show. They were about presence, understanding, and care. For a long moment, they sat in silence. Outside, the city was sleeping. Inside, the small lamp threw warm light across the room. Pavel's hands rested on the table, trembling slightly. "I left soup for you," Lena said finally. "I thought you'd be hungry." He looked at the bowl, steam curling like gentle reminders. He remembered the lavish spreads at the party, the glittering dresses, the clinking glasses, but none of it had felt real, not like this. Not the warmth of the kitchen, not her simple attention, not the quiet pride she carried in being herself. Pavel reached for the bowl, and as he lifted the spoon, he realized that his admiration for Victor's wife had been a reflection of something deeper, the recognition of what he had in front of him all along. He had been too blind to see it. You really are remarkable," he said, his voice low but sincere, looking at her now with new understanding. "Not because of how you dress or what people think. But because of everything else. Because of you." Lena's eyes softened, but she didn't flare with pride or delight. She simply nodded. "Thank you," she said. "That's all I ever wanted. For you to see me. Not the outside world." Pavel swallowed, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a quiet sense of humility. He understood that love and respect were not performances, they were lived, quietly, every day. And the woman in front of him had been living the truth for years. He ate the soup slowly, savoring warmth and simplicity. Outside, the city was still quiet, but inside, something shifted. He no longer needed to compare, no longer felt the sting of insecurity. He had what truly mattered: presence, understanding, and a love that didn't need glitter or show. And in that quiet, unremarkable kitchen, Pavel finally began to see the brightness that had always been there. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the kitchen window, falling in golden rectangles on the floor. Pavel sat at the table, still in his suit from the previous evening, though the tie hung loose. Lena moved around quietly, making breakfast. The apartment smelled of coffee and toasted bread, and for the first time in a long time, Pavel felt grounded rather than anxious. "I can make your eggs the way you like," Lena said without looking at him, but her tone carried warmth. "No," Pavel replied, shaking his head. I want to eat what you make." For once, she glanced at him, eyebrows raised, but smiled softly. Silence filled the room. Not awkward, but comfortable, the kind that comes when people are aligned in thought without speaking it. After breakfast, Pavel lingered over his coffee, thoughts circling. The corporate party had been glittering, full of applause and polite smiles. But the memory that clung to him wasn't of the glamour, it was of Victor and Lena, the quiet authority she held without effort, the way the room subtly leaned toward her presence. He realized he had spent so long worrying about appearances that he hadn't seen the substance, the strength, the warmth that truly mattered. "Lena," he began, his voice tentative. "Last night, she set the plate down and turned, her hair catching the sunlight. She didn't interrupt, she simply waited. I didn't appreciate what I have. He paused, struggling to articulate the realization. "I thought admiration came from looking flashy or impressive. But it doesn't. It comes from being consistent, kind, and present. And I see now, I've been blind." Lena's eyes softened. "We all learn," she said gently. "Even if it's the hard way." Pavel sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I even envied Victor's wife last night," he admitted, embarrassed. "I thought she had something I didn't. But she's not different. She's just like you. Calm, confident, steady." "I see that now." Lena nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "That's the lesson. You were looking at others to measure yourself, instead of noticing what's right in front of you." He nodded slowly. Her words struck deeper than he expected. They weren't just words. They were a mirror reflecting his own failures, his own insecurities. And in that reflection, he saw a man who had been too proud, too distracted by appearances, too careless with appreciation. That evening, Pavel decided to walk home from work. The streets were quiet, and the air carried a gentle chill. He passed the same streets where he had often hurried past, never noticing the small cafes, the street musicians, the way sunlight bounced off windows. Today, it all seemed brighter, softer, alive. At home, Lena was reading at the couch, a blanket draped over her shoulders. She looked up as he entered, and her smile was effortless. "I made tea," she said. "I thought we could sit and talk." Pavel joined her, letting the warmth of the teacup seep into his hands. He felt lighter, not from the tea, but from the shift inside him, a quiet understanding, a new perspective. "I want to try," he said finally, looking at her. "I want to be present, really present. Not flashy, not showing off. I want to notice the little things, appreciate the small moments, and you." Lena reached out, taking his hand gently. "That's all I've ever wanted. Presence, attention, honesty." He nodded, feeling a mix of relief and determination. He realized that admiration wasn't something that could be borrowed or observed from others, it had to be cultivated, starting with the people closest to him. In the following weeks, Pavel's perspective shifted subtly but noticeably. At work, he stopped comparing, stopped envying, stopped chasing approval. At home, he noticed Lena's small gestures, how she brewed his coffee just the way he liked it, how she remembered the stories he told her weeks ago, how she managed her own world without expecting constant recognition. Each moment was a lesson in appreciation, each gesture a reminder that substance outweighed show. One evening, he returned from work to find a small note on the kitchen table. It read, "Dinner is in the oven. Don't rush. I saved the last piece of cake for you." Pavel smiled, feeling a warmth that no corporate applause, no glamorous dress, no sparkling smile at a party could ever match. He understood now. The real brilliance wasn't in being noticed by the world, it was in being seen by the one person who mattered, and in noticing them in return. That night, they ate together, laughed together, and shared stories. The city outside hummed, indifferent and vast, but inside the apartment, there was a quiet glow, steady, warm, enduring. Pavel finally realized that the corporate party, the glitter, the envy, they had been distractions. The true celebration, the real lesson, had been waiting for him at home all along. And in that quiet, ordinary, unremarkable space, he finally felt what it meant to be rich, not in gold or status, but in understanding, love, and presence.